Hey, time for another unbelievable story. They say trust is everything. But what happens when 15 years of absolute trust vanish because of a single, accidentally seen notification on your husband's phone? Today you'll meet Sarah, whose world flipped when a gut feeling and that notification forced her to find the hidden truth right in her own dining room. Part number 2.
That night, I made a promise to myself. I would never again ask a question if I already knew the answer. For weeks, I've been hoping one of them would suddenly tell me the truth. That Mark would break down and confess. That Emily would call me in tears and admit everything. Neither happened. If anything, they became even more convincing. Mark brought me flowers twice that week. Emily mailed me a handwritten card thanking me for being the best friend anyone could ask for. I stared at those words for a long time before tearing the card into tiny pieces. By then, I had stopped crying. The sadness was still there, buried somewhere beneath the surface, but something else had taken its place. Clarity. Every lie they told made it easier to let go of the life I thought I had. I bought a small notebook and started writing everything down. Dates, times, phone calls, excuses, credit card charges. If Mark said he had a meeting, I wrote it down. If Emily claimed she was visiting family, I wrote that down too. Soon, the notebook became impossible to ignore. Patterns filled every page. Almost every Tuesday afternoon, every other Thursday, the occasional Saturday when I believed Mark was helping coworkers or watching football with friends. They weren't random meetings. They had a routine. One afternoon, while Mark was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. He shouted through the door, "Can you see who that is?" For a split second, I froze. Then I picked it up. The screen was locked, but the notification appeared anyway. Emily. "Everything's still on for next month?" I swallowed hard. "What does it say?" Mark asked. "It's just a calendar reminder," I lied. "Can you dismiss it?" I already did. I placed the phone exactly where I'd found it. A minute later, he walked out with a towel around his waist. He never questioned me. He assumed I hadn't seen anything. That assumption became my greatest advantage. The next week, I scheduled an appointment with a divorce attorney during my lunch break. Walking into that office felt surreal. I kept expecting someone to stop me and say there had been a mistake. Instead, the attorney simply smiled and asked, "How can I help you today?" The words caught in my throat. My husband is having an affair. Saying it out loud made it real. She listened without interrupting while I explained everything I discovered. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Do you have evidence?" I nodded. "More every day." "Good," she said softly. "Keep collecting it. Don't confront him until you're ready." That advice stayed with me. Don't confront him, not yet. A few days later, another piece of the puzzle fell into place by accident. I was reviewing our monthly bank statement when I noticed several payments I didn't recognize. A luxury apartment complex. The charges weren't large enough to stand out at first, just recurring electronic transfers every month. Curious, I searched the address online. It wasn't a hotel, it wasn't an office. It was a high-end apartment building across town. I immediately assumed Mark had rented a place. My heart sank. But after calling the management office and pretending to have the wrong account number, I learned something unexpected. The payments weren't for rent. They were for a reserved parking space. Why would anyone pay hundreds of dollars every month just to park there? Unless someone who lived in the building couldn't register another vehicle under their own name. Later that evening, I drove past the apartment complex. I parked across the street and waited. Nearly an hour passed. Then Emily's car pulled into the garage. She used a parking pass. The same parking pass my husband had been paying for. I sat there in complete silence. She wasn't just meeting him occasionally. he had been quietly paying for part of her life. How long had that been happening? How much of our money had gone toward helping the woman who smiled in my face and called herself my best friend? I dug deeper into our finances over the next 2 days. The truth kept getting uglier. A designer handbag, jewelry, weekend spa reservations, restaurant bills I had never attended. Most had been disguised as business expenses or cash withdrawals. Individually, they looked harmless. Together, they painted a picture I could no longer ignore. Late Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. For a second, I thought it was spam. Instead, it contained a single sentence. You deserve to know they're planning to move in together after the divorce. No name, no explanation, just those words. A second message arrived 30 seconds later. Check the storage unit on Riverside, Unit 214. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding. I had never heard of any storage unit. Mark had never mentioned renting one. And if someone out there knew enough to send me that message, what else were they hiding? I didn't go to the storage unit that day. Every instinct told me to get in my car immediately, but another part of me warned that I could be walking into a trap. I didn't know who had sent the messages or why. Instead, I waited. The following afternoon, after making sure Mark was at work, I drove to Riverside Storage. Unit 214 was halfway down a quiet row of metal doors. I just stood there for a moment, staring at the number. My hands felt numb. The office manager looked up when I walked in. Can I help you? I forced a polite smile. My husband rents a unit here. I think he left something I need. Name? Mark Harrison. She typed for a few seconds. Yes, he has a unit. My heart skipped. I forgot the access code. Could you help me? She hesitated before asking for identification. I handed over my driver's license, praying that having the same last name would be enough. She compared the information, nodded, and opened the gate remotely. Just make sure you lock it again when you're done. I thanked her and walked back outside. Every step felt heavier than the last. The lock clicked open. I slowly rolled up the metal door. It wasn't packed with furniture or old boxes like I expected. Instead, it looked almost organized. A few plastic storage bins, 2 suitcases, a coffee maker still inside its box, brand new towels, kitchen dishes wrapped in newspaper, a queen-size comforter, everything someone would need to furnish a new apartment. I opened one of the bins. Inside were framed photographs, not of me, of Mark and Emily, selfies, weekend trips, restaurant dinners. One picture showed them standing on a beach with their arms around each other. On the back, written in Emily's handwriting, were the words, "Our first weekend as us." The date made my knees buckle. It had been 8 months earlier. That same weekend, Mark had told me he was attending a mandatory work conference. I sat down on one of the boxes because I thought I might faint. They hadn't been planning a future. They had already started living one. Near the back of the unit sat a cardboard folder labeled lease documents. Inside was an unsigned apartment lease. Both their names were printed at the top. Move-in date, 3 weeks away. Exactly 1 week after our wedding anniversary. My wedding anniversary. The realization hit me harder than anything else. They hadn't been waiting for the right moment. They had scheduled my replacement. I quietly photographed every document before putting everything back exactly where I'd found it. By the time I reached my car, I wasn't crying anymore. There was nothing left to cry about. That evening, I called my attorney. "I have enough," I said. "I think you do too," she replied after I described what I'd found. "What's next?" "Now you decide how you want your marriage to end." For the first time in weeks, I smiled, not because I was happy, because I finally had control. Over the next several days, I worked with my attorney to prepare everything: the divorce papers, financial records, copies of messages, hotel receipts, photographs, bank statements, the lease. Every piece of evidence was organized in a single binder. Then I made one final decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw things. I wasn't going to give either of them the dramatic scene they could later use to paint me as unstable. I wanted the truth to speak for itself. The following Sunday, I invited our parents, Mark's sister, Emily, and 2 close family friends over for dinner. No one thought it was unusual. I told everyone I had exciting news to share. Emily even texted me that morning. "Can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you." I replied with a simple heart. By 7 o'clock, everyone was gathered around our dining table. There was laughter, wine, stories. Mark looked completely relaxed. Emily sat across from me, smiling as if she belonged there. In a way, she probably believed she did. After dessert, I stood up, carrying the binder. "I want to thank all of you for coming," I said. Mark looked at me curiously. "What's the big announcement?" I smiled. "I finally know the truth." The room fell silent. I opened the binder and placed the first photograph on the table. Mark's smile disappeared. Emily's face turned white. Neither of them said a word. I laid down the hotel receipt next. Then the phone records, then the screenshots, then the apartment lease, one by one. No speeches, no accusations, just facts. Mark finally found his voice. "Sarah, I can explain." I looked at him calmly. "I know." He blinked. "You do?" "Go ahead." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Emily started crying quietly. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. Mark reached toward her instinctively, in front of everyone. That single movement said more than any confession ever could. I closed the binder, reached into my bag, and slid one final envelope across the table until it stopped in front of my husband. He stared at it without touching it. Then he slowly read the words printed across the front. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." No one spoke. The silence around the table was so heavy it felt impossible to breathe. Mark kept staring at the envelope as though refusing to touch it would somehow make it disappear. Finally, his mother broke the silence. "Mark," she whispered, "please tell me this isn't true." He didn't answer. He couldn't. Every piece of evidence was lying on the table between us. There was nothing left to deny. Emily covered her face with both hands and sobbed quietly. "I'm so sorry," she repeated over and over. The words sounded empty. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry didn't erase the hundreds of lies. Sorry didn't give me back the year they had stolen from my life. Mark finally looked at me. "When did you find out?" "A few weeks ago." His eyes widened. "You knew all this time?" I nodded. "I wanted to hear the truth from you. I was going to tell you." For the first time that evening, I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because I'd heard enough lies to recognize another one instantly. "When?" I asked calmly. "When you moved into the apartment with her?" His face fell. He knew I had found the lease. No explanation could survive that. His father stood up so abruptly that his chair scraped loudly across the floor. "I didn't raise you to do this." Mark lowered his head. "I know. You betrayed your wife. I know. You betrayed your family. I know." His father looked at him for another second before quietly walking out of the house. A few moments later, his mother followed, tears streaming down her face. Emily tried to come toward me. "Please, let me explain." I stepped back. "No, I never wanted to hurt you. You had hundreds of chances not to." She stopped walking. There was nothing she could say. She had looked me in the eyes. She had hugged me. She had sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee while sleeping with my husband. Some betrayals don't deserve an explanation. They deserve distance. Within an hour, everyone had left. Only Mark and I remained in the house we had once planned to grow old in. He sat on the couch, staring at the floor. I've destroyed everything. Yes. I don't expect you to forgive me. You shouldn't. I did love you. His words barely registered. Maybe he believed them. Maybe, at one point, they had even been true. But love isn't measured by what someone says. It's measured by what they choose to do when no one is watching. I'll stay somewhere else tonight, he said quietly. I've already packed your suitcase. He looked surprised. When? While you were busy building your new life. He nodded without arguing. 10 minutes later, he walked out the front door carrying one suitcase. He didn't ask for another chance. Maybe he knew he didn't deserve one. Maybe he knew there wasn't one left to ask for. The divorce moved surprisingly quickly. Because of the evidence, there were very few disputes. I kept the house. We divided our finances. The signatures took only a few minutes. Ending 15 years of marriage required less time than ordering lunch. Emily and Mark moved into the apartment they'd planned to share. For a while, I heard updates through mutual friends. They weren't happy. Without secrecy, their relationship seemed different. The excitement of sneaking around had disappeared. Arguments became frequent. Trust became impossible. If someone is willing to betray a spouse, how can either person ever truly believe they won't be betrayed next? About 6 months after the divorce, Mark called me. I almost didn't answer. I just wanted to apologize, he said. I know it won't change anything. It won't. I think about what I did every day. I believed him. Regret sounded different from excuses. Unfortunately for him, it had arrived too late. I hope one day you can be happy, he said before hanging up. I already am, I answered. And for the first time, it wasn't a lie. These days, my life looks nothing like the one I imagined. The house is quieter. The future is different. Some mornings, I still catch myself reaching for the other side of the bed before remembering I'm alone. But being alone is nothing compared to living beside someone who makes you feel invisible. People often ask whether I regret trusting them. I don't. Trust wasn't my mistake. Their betrayal was. Looking back, I ignored too many warning signs because I believed love meant giving people the benefit of the doubt. Now, I understand something different. Love should never require you to silence your intuition. The moment you start explaining away every uncomfortable feeling just to protect someone else's image, you begin abandoning yourself. If my story has taught me anything, it's this. The truth almost always whispers before it screams. And sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do isn't walking away from the person who betrayed you. It's walking away from the version of your life you thought would last forever. I lost a husband. I lost my best friend. But somewhere between the lies, the tears, and the goodbye, I found something I didn't even realize I'd been missing. Myself.